My name is Angie Van Berkel,
How old are you?
and I'm 34 years old.
Do you think your colleagues believe that your age correlates to lack of experience?
No, because I'm not really that young anymore. I've worked for several years, so I'm not really associated with, like, I just graduated from college. Yeah.
And where are you from?
Originally Minnesota. I was born there, but I lived in Seattle, Washington, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and I went to school in Kentucky, and my mom's from Hawaii, so I've sort of lived all over it.
What do you know about your culture?
So my last name is Dutch, and the Dutch culture is what my dad grew up in, and my grandparents live on an all Dutch town, farming town in Minnesota, and so that's basically my heritage. And so I know a lot of them are immigrants. Recently, and as far back as like 1920 or so. And you know, just some of the food and different cultural ways of talking, and wooden shoes and traditional ways of windmills and all that stuff are definitely a part of the culture. Yeah.
And then what religions does your culture typically follow?
So it's a kind of Protestantism called Christian Reformed, and they follow the teachings of Calvin. And it feels like a Catholic church, but it's sort of Protestant, but it's that very sort of Scandinavian, like, stoic worship service.
Are there any differences between your beliefs or your values between you and your religion?
Yeah, so I grew up like that, but I don't really follow that kind of denomination. I don't really believe everything they do. It's not necessarily like my style. So it's not a church that I choose to belong to as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there are any gender inequalities in the teacher workforce?
No. Historically teachers have been mostly mostly female, and the reason that's historical is because it was seen about 100 years ago is not very prestigious, and therefore women did it because we didn't have equal rights back then. And I think it's changing, but I think stereotypically most people think teaching is sort of a woman's job. But obviously there's lots of men in the school, and I don't think that someone would not get a job because they're a man. So I don't really think that there's any inequities, but I do think that there's a stereotype that this is sort of female work.
And in what ways do you think you're affected by having the master status of being a female?
Well, I guess it really depends on where you live. So in the DC area, and how I grew up, like they, very much, I don't have a problem here at all being a female. I don't feel like I've encountered any kind of discrimination or anything. I've always been empowered to, do whatever you want to do and become very independent. But I think if I lived in other parts of the country, I think that there would probably be more sort of like pressure to like, not be independent and to, I don't know, like you would be trained as like you are, whatever, you're not as important as a man or something like that. But I haven't personally encountered it.
What social class do you consider yourself to be a part of?
Is it middle class?
Middle class? And then do you think your social class has a large impact on the way you're treated in the area?
I think so. I think no matter, I guess wherever you are, like the high, if you're high class, you're, considered, of course wealthy and you have the means to do whatever. If you're low class, I think you have, less choices. But middle class is the majority of the country, so I sort of fit what most people are. And really most people in the area, but I do think that because this area is expensive and land is very expensive, that I think that even for middle class families, it's a struggle. So I could probably buy a house if I lived not in this area, but I don't have that kind of money. So.
Thank you.